Thanks for joining us Behind the Frontline, a podcast providing timeless solutions to everyday workforce and workplace challenges. Frontline Training Solutions is an express employment professionals company, strategically placed between the workplace and the workforce with professionals standing by, ready to combat your unique challenges. Learn more about what we do at frontlineon.com.
Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Frontline. And I'm joined in the studio today with David Robb, our co-owner and managing partner of Frontline. Say hi, David.
Hello, everyone.
And we're also joined with Mike Lee, who's the Vice President of Client Solutions and Operations. Hey, Mike.
Hello. Good to be here.
This is Mike's first podcast with us, and he recently did his first webinar with us as well, alongside David here, where it's called The Workforce Ahead, and it's on our archive. We encourage you to go watch that. But David and Mike, I was hoping that maybe you could just kind of talk from a broad level what this webinar was about and why it's so critical for employers to listen to it right now.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Nick. So excited to be here today and break down a little bit more on what we shared on the webinar, answer some questions we got. So the webinar, really, we're looking at what's going on in the labor market and the talent market right now, and then where we're headed over the next 5 to 10 years. So right now, what we talked about is we have a bit of a talent surplus. So for those of you who have been hiring recently, you've probably noticed that it is getting maybe a little bit easier. We're getting more applications. You're getting more job seeker activity. But we did dive into, there is still a mismatch. So there's a mismatch between skills and what's actually being hired for right now. So while we might be getting more applicant activity, still not always easy to fill all of those jobs, especially maybe some more technical skilled roles. And then, we looked ahead and looked at really a lot of time on the long-term demographic trends. A lot of that's being driven by two factors. One, the baby boomers retiring, and two, we've had really low birth rates for several decades here, and that's starting to catch up with us. Mm-hmm. So as we take a step back and look at those long-term trends, we know that this talent surplus that we're in right now is not going to last, and we're expecting that talent crisis to return. And then we asked the question about AI and what that's going to do for us. Mike, maybe you can summarize what we talked about.
Yeah, I think I remember the answer was yes and no. So yes, AI is going to impact the talent shortage. It's going to impact it in a positive way by creating efficiencies for organizations. No, I don't believe that it's going to completely resolve the entire talent shortage that we're going to see. When you look at the statistics and the trends that we talked about, and the low birth rate, lower immigration, and then you have the baby boomers continuing to exit the workforce, and you have less people, that talent shortage is going to be impacted, I believe, more so than the benefit that we're going to see at the adoption rate of AI over the course of the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And I mean, you guys even talked about some micro factors in there, like immigration and other things that might be affecting, the labor force participation rate. But hopefully right now, let's zoom out for a second. And based on everything you presented, what does the workforce actually look like over the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, we presented some pretty broad level things and some facts and some figures, but what does it actually look like over the next 5 to 10 years? And what are most leaders underestimating?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the sky is not falling. And so, yes, AI is here. Yes, there are talent gaps. Yes, there's going to be a talent shortage. But the good news is that there's time to prepare. There's time to look ahead. And to tie that into the second part of the question about what are leaders underestimating, I think the ability and the option to be creative and innovative as they think about those next 5 to 7 years. And so there's still time to prepare. There's still time to be intentional. There's time to look ahead. There's time to start investing in your talent. There's time to start thinking about your retention strategy. There's time to start learning more about AI, adopting AI, applying AI, getting the benefits of AI. But the sky is not falling. This is not going to change tomorrow. So take a deep breath, prepare as a leader, walk the talk, engage your team. We talked a lot about this in the webinar. Engage your team, do it with them, not to them, and enjoy it, but be prepared.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference right now from the talent crisis we saw in 2021 and, all the way to 2022, 2023, was that happened almost overnight because of COVID. Some people left the workforce, there were a lot of other factors too, but that happened almost overnight. Whereas, as Mike was saying, we're going to have time now. So by 2032, we expect that labor force participation rate, to be lower than it was during the talent crisis. So we are going to have a talent crisis. but it's going to happen gradually over the years that we're going to get there. So we've got time to prepare. Employers need to be thinking proactively. Right now, we do have some breathing room with a little bit of a talent surplus. So take advantage of that and start preparing for when things get a little tighter.
Yeah, you both mentioned in the webinar that we're in something right now called a low hire, low fire market. And right now, our company's getting a false sense of security. And are they about to be caught off guard again? I mean, you said the sky is not falling and we have time to prepare, but what should they be preparing for?
Well, I feel like that's one point. I think why we're like we need to do this webinar, and we've been doing labor updates like this almost every year, and why I feel like we need to keep doing these, because the last thing an employer should do is go, oh, it's a talent surplus. I'm getting more applications than I did a couple years ago. I can sit back and stop focusing on being a great employer, stop focusing on attraction and retention, because maybe you can get away with that for a year or two, but it's going to really come back around, and you're going to be in a lot of pain if you're not really being intentional around being an employer of choice.
This is one of the reasons it's important for leaders to take a step back from time to time, to get out of the weeds, to look at what's happening in the world, to look what's happening in their industry, to look at what's happening in their geography, so that they can really plan and prepare. I think one of the mistakes leaders make is they get so ingrained in the day-to-day business, putting out fires and solving problems, that they're not looking ahead. They're only looking to today. So I think, yeah, Nick, I mean, there's definitely employers out there that unfortunately are only focused right now on how to use AI to get through their 167 applicants for this one job that they have to fill. And that's what they think is winning the day and solving the problems. But they're not taking a step back to look at the holistic view, to see about what's coming ahead and how do I prepare as a leader and spend an intentional amount of my time on strategy, not just tactical day-to-day events and activities.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the balance of leadership. I mean, the last podcast episode we have, go listen to that, was literally on the balance of leadership and handling that balcony and the dance floor. Planning further out. So we want you to go listen to that. But you showed some graphs in the webinar that we're technically in a talent surplus right now, yet companies still can't fill key roles. And so there's AI in that. What's the real issue here? Is it a talent shortage or is it a talent misalignment?
Yes.
Yes to both.
Yes, both. Yeah, I think the graphs do a great job of showing, as David walked through those, just the mathematical gap that does exist from a practicality perspective. But then we spent a little time on the skilled trades and just talking about how for many years generations were told, like, go to the university, go to college, get a degree, get into business, this is the format that you should be taking. And we're now seeing that happening, and we are seeing a generation of the skilled trades that is retiring, and there is a real knowledge gap. And so we joke, but it is yes and. It's not either or. But I don't know, David, if you have other thoughts?
I mean, you have both issues, right? There's just overall at a macro level is not enough. There won't be enough people for all the jobs. And then to compound that, right, you might not have the right people for the right jobs. We talked about skilled trade, skilled manufacturing. We're expecting 2 million unfilled jobs in the coming years. Healthcare at 3 million unfilled jobs in the coming years because of a lot of that misalignment with skills and with where the jobs are.
Yeah. So one of the questions we received in the webinar, and if you're watching right now, thanks for tuning in. We told you we'd ask your question. Here it is. So with the ongoing shortage in skilled trades, maintenance, HVAC, electrical, how would you advise a business proactively address workforce demand before it becomes a crisis?
Yeah, I think we mentioned in the webinar, but we've seen a huge increase in demand for just our apprenticeship services that we're offering organizations, and that can take some time to see the return on investment. But I think if you're not investing in an apprenticeship type of program today, if you're not investing in that pipeline today, make that a priority, get involved, be thinking 2 to 3 years ahead and looking down the road at what you need in order to manage that talent pipeline appropriately.
Yep. And it might be a formal Department of Labor certified apprenticeship program, or it could be something more informal. Maybe you're a small HVAC company and you don't want to have a big official program, but maybe set up a mentorship program, just something so that you're having that knowledge transfer. Because I imagine if you're in that space, you probably have some really skilled people who maybe are in their 50s or older, but start creating that talent pipeline. Hire that raw talent out of community college or out of high school, and give them a pathway where you can teach them these skills over the next 4 to 5 years. And soon they're going to be making more money than that new college grad.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is so critical too, because you also made the point in the webinar that we're going to start seeing, especially this boomer generation and maybe the Gen X start thinking about retiring earlier.
Yep.
And so they're carrying so many years of just rich equity knowledge of the company. It's something that employers should be considering, right? Especially when it comes to this knowledge transfer.
Yeah.
Knowledge transfer is definitely a topic when it comes to retirements, even when it comes to people who need to be on an extended leave of absence from their employment for a lot of different reasons nowadays. But knowledge management, knowledge transfer, what is your company's strategy to get the knowledge to the next generation or to the next person that's in your talent pipeline? And yes, you mentioned, we talked about apprenticeship, we talked about just that coaching and mentoring relationships within an organization, having people spend time together intentionally. I think we saw in the comments online too, internships. Are you taking advantage of bringing people in for 3-4 summers in a row with the intent to then hire, and they are gaining knowledge over the course of that time? But you can only put so much knowledge down on paper, and at some point there has to be a lot of meaningful conversations, and you're not going to transfer 20 to 30 years of experience in 2 to 3 weeks of conversations. It has to be really planned out in advance.
Yeah, it takes time, especially if we're talking some of those skilled trades roles. It takes time to develop that, pass down that knowledge. So you want to really be proactive. You want to have a pipeline of people, right? You don't want just, hey, we've got our people who are about to retire, and then we've got our really, really brand new people. Like, start building that pipeline so you have people kind of throughout that full cycle of knowledge that you can keep building on.
That's so good. So I've got a little bit of a paradox question. We saw the data. We heard the presentation. If there's a shortage of talent coming, what we're seeing, we got a question in the webinar. Why are some applicants not responding to interview invitations, especially in roles like tellers or entry-level positions, if there is a talent shortage? What do you guys have to say to that?
Well, there's probably a lot of things, but one thing I would say is that mindset of the job seeker, I feel like really shifted from 2020 to 2023, especially when we were in that, there was a surplus of job openings, and it really was a job seeker market. We really saw a lot of those maybe best practices for job seekers kind of shift. You hear a lot about people ghosting interviews. You hear a lot about, just not following up on applications. There's also a lot of tools out there that are supposed to help the job seeker, and they can blast out their application to hundreds of job postings. AI can help with that. AI can make their resumes. So there's a lot of things out there where they can cast a wide net, which might be helpful. But on the employer side, then you end up dealing with hundreds of applications, and you're wondering why people aren't responding. So I think it's a couple different things. I definitely think that mindset has shifted, which does make it a little bit harder for those hiring managers and those HR people to actually get good people in the door.
Yeah, and I'll draw a parallel to that. So the same way that those applicants learned poor behaviors in ghosting because they were in the position of power, right now you have a situation where organizations are learning bad behavior because they're in the situation of power because they have hundreds of applicants for positions. But as that starts to shift, they're going to have to unlearn those bad behaviors. And the organizations that don't unlearn those bad behaviors that happened during the surplus are going to be left behind and are going to face some really great talent shortages beyond that of what other companies may experience.
Yeah. And you mentioned a second ago, David, casting a wider net. And we even mentioned in the webinar, hire for the personality or the culture fit, and then teach them the skills that they need. What would you say is the percentage breakdown in that? Let's talk about that realistically.
I'll go first. I'm probably on the extreme side, so I'll go maybe too far one direction. David can rein it back in. I'm honestly I'll say 80-20. I think that there's a lot of people out there that have tremendous talent. They have great minds. And if they fit your culture, they can do a lot of wonderful things for you. And you should be able to plug and play them into a lot of different positions and things. Right now, again, if you're talking about a brain surgeon, that's different than you're talking about, manufacturing company. I want my brain surgeon to be 100% technical. I don't really care what their personality is.
80% technical, 20% culture, or 80% culture?
80% culture and 20% technical. I'm saying that you can teach a lot of technical skills. And I think companies forget that you can teach that. Again, some are going to take longer than others. And so so if you're talking about skilled trades, yeah, I mean, I agree with David. It's going to take years for people to learn the things that they need to learn. But can they do it? Yes. I can go learn skilled trades. It's going to take me years to do that. But I think for most organizations, if somebody's joined your organization, they've joined your industry, and they're the right culture fit, and they have a great mind about them, you should be able to plug and play them in a lot of different roles around your organization. So again, I'm probably extreme to one side. The truth is probably somewhere more towards the middle.
Yeah, and I don't think about it in terms of, hey, this percentage culture fit, this percentage skills. I feel like, the culture you want to have, the values you have for an organization, those really are non-negotiables. Like, you need to be screening people for that type of fit. And then you also need to be screening for skills fit. But if they don't have that values match and that cultures match, you probably shouldn't hire them at all. And one thing that's an important note to make, because I think sometimes people use that culture fit to just say, well, I just want to hire a bunch of people that are already like the people who are already here. And that's not the goal, right? The goal isn't just to, hey, let's hire people that are the same as everyone else who works here. You want to bring in different perspectives and different beliefs. But you do want to have that mission and culture that you believe in and make sure someone aligns with that.
Those are both really, really great points. Another question we received in the webinar, we hire for general labor roles like cleaning when there's limited upward mobility, small teams, flat structure. If advancement isn't the lever, how do you retain and motivate people in those environments long term?
It's a great question. I don't know what the exact answer is, but I know that a lot of this stems from where you find your talent and aligning with that talent on the front end. So organizations who overpromise and underdeliver, I think, set themselves up for failure. And I think as a company, you need to be upfront, you need to be honest, you need to be transparent about not only the position you're hiring for, but what does that next 3 to 5 years look like? And if the opportunity for growth and development is there, are these people that are willing to accept that? Of course, there's always things that you can just do, and it's not always the things that cost money. Saying thank you, having personal time, asking questions about what they did on their weekend, and just engaging with your employees, having a conversation with your employees, getting to know them, rewarding them. I know, like when I joined here, I filled out a questionnaire. What are things I like to do with my time? What are little like snacks and things that I like? And so the organization can then find ways to engage with you and reward you differently than vertical promotion through an organization.
Yeah, I think being transparent up front, because not every organization is the same. Not every job is created equal. And then I think really thinking as an organization, as the positions that you have, what are the things that you can leave into that are unique, that are the benefits of that job, and then find people where those things resonate with them, whether it's a specific schedule, it's pay, it's other things. And then I think the last point I'll make too is, not all turnover is bad, and sometimes people have a season at your organization and then they need to graduate and go somewhere else. So if you're the sort of employer where these roles are going to be the sort of role where we hold someone for 2 to 4 years, that's okay. Be okay with that and build your organization structure around the fact that we're going to be building and training, because these are transitionary roles or roles that people are only going to be in for so long.
Yeah. What would you say to a company that, maybe smaller in size, and I don't know if the difference is between 100 or 1,000 person company, but what would you say to a company that's maybe smaller in size and they are facing turnover like that? We tell them to embrace, the 3 to 4 year turnover, but there still is that knowledge gap and that people retiring out and they're trying to figure out how this succession plan is going to work. So we even received the question in the webinar, I'm planning on retiring in the next 5 years, with a small team. How do I prepare myself and my team for this? Especially if we're considering that there could be some natural turnover here.
Yep. Yeah, I think, again, we talked a little bit this on the webinar, but I think trust and transparency and have the conversation. I think don't have your head buried in the sand. And so if you know that people are nearing potential retirement age, be having that conversation, with them. You have to ask in an HR appropriate way, obviously, but, what are your career goals? And what I find is that there's a lot of talented people out there that, as we said again in the webinar, they're not looking for that cliff of retirement to drop off one day and all of a sudden I'm done. A lot of those people end up coming back into the workforce because it's only a month or two later and they're like, I didn't retire to anything. I just left a job and I still have a lot of time and I have a lot of purpose. And so there's a whole untapped resources out there of people that are at that age. So have conversations with your employees. This sounds so basic, but if you're not having one-on-ones and you're not talking and you're not asking questions, you're not having conversation, then you're probably going to get blindsided, unfortunately. But if you get to know your employees and you have open conversations and you ask questions and you build trust and you build transparency, I think you can avoid a lot of problems, and that's going to drive engagement, and you're going to get better results from them as well. So it sounds a little elementary, but sometimes it is those simple things that you can be doing as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, just to reiterate, it all, I think, revolves around the leader, right? All revolves around the senior leadership, around that direct manager, so what are you doing to invest in those individuals so they can invest in the team?
Great. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about AI. So you both said AI is yes and no when it comes to solving workforce challenges. Where do you think organizations are overestimating AI, and where are they actually underutilizing it?
So I think, we talked about shifting the mindset from AI is going to replace people to AI is going to maybe augment positions or maybe help you redeploy people. So I think that's a little bit of the mindset shift. Because it really is about helping us be more efficient, not necessarily help us eliminate a bunch of positions, especially with employers are going to need to grow in the future, but we're not going to have access to as many people, right? Mm-hmm. So AI can be that tool to help us grow without growing employment as much. And I think people are on both ends of the spectrum on it. We mentioned this, right? People who are hardly utilizing it don't think it's going to have a big impact, and people who think it's going to eliminate all jobs and totally transform stuff. I don't think it's super beneficial to be in either extreme. I think we need to somewhere realistically be in the middle with our expectations, and then just get started utilizing it and being a little more systematic about implementing it into the company.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to the levels of maturity as well. I think on that far right side, we saw level 4 maturity, the systematizing in an organization. And that was where we saw a very low level of people playing in that space. And that's an intimidating space. I think it's easy for people to start at that entry level into AI, dabble with it a little bit, play with it. It's innocent. I'm trying some things. I have some successes. I have some failures. I think where people need to spend some intentional time is on the system side. And so, we've even reached out here, looked at some of our systems that have AI components to them and reaching out to the vendors to say, hey, help us understand what the capabilities are, because otherwise we're paying for something that we're not using. Mm-hmm. So it requires a vulnerability for an organization to reach out to the vendor of a system and say, I know there's an AI component here, but I don't know how to use it and I don't know where to begin, but we're willing to and we want your help. So I think that's where it's underutilized, and there's a great opportunity for organizations. I think where it's overutilized is going back to that entry level where people get stuck in the using AI as Google on steroids. And I said the purists are going to hate that. And I think they hate it when people get stuck there. And people just continue to pull up the chat and ask the chat a question and treat it like it's Google on steroids. And they're like, woohoo, look at me, I'm an AI power user. So I think that's where people get stuck. And I think the underutilization is happening more on the mature end of the systematic side.
Yeah, let's talk just a little bit more about entry level. We talked about a surplus in entry level white collar talent, partly because AI is already replacing some of that work. I've mentioned before that I went into white collar space. We all did, but if I could go back 25 years, I probably would have become a plumber. Yep. I would have done something in the blue collar world, because we know that that's not something AI is going to replace. Right. But that's all in hindsight. But we know that AI is already replacing some of the work. What does this mean for the next generation trying to enter the workforce? How should companies rethink entry level?
Yeah, I definitely think it's somewhere when we were talking about that misalignment earlier is, we were talking about it from the perspective of, hey, there's these jobs out there and people don't have the skills to fill it. But we're also seeing the reverse, like you said, where there are a lot of those people with maybe more of those entry-level professional skills, I would say, those jobs or skills of someone typically right after college, right? That's where we're seeing a surplus of talent, because the jobs have either shrunk or they've just flatlined. And a lot of that's because of AI, because a marketing person is able to do what 2 marketing people used to be able to do, because AI is helping with writing or with graphic design or other things like that. So it's definitely going to be something interesting to watch out for. If I was going into college right now, I would be very strategic about maybe what degrees or what lane we're focusing in. We talked about like software programmers, like that's been a big decline in employment in that space because AI has been able to help augment that. Now, we still need people in all these areas, but AI is augmenting it and maybe making it so we don't need as many. So yeah, definitely, you need to think about what path you're going to choose because it might be more challenging, especially, it'd be a tough time to be entering the workforce right now, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and I think from a employer's perspective, think about the questions that you're asking in those interviews when you're selecting talent. Asking these individuals, because they're not going to come in and file papers. They're not going to come in and just answer a phone. You're going to need them providing value right away. But what you're really trying to do is in those interviews unlock, how do they think? Are they agile? Can they pivot? Can they move? Do they accept feedback? So I would go back and rethink how you interview and how you select and how you find talent. I think sometimes companies can be very archaic in how they go find talent. And then they're surprised 3 months later when the person they thought was a home run was actually a single or maybe even a double, right? So evaluate the questions that you're asking in those interviews to find the talent that's going to be able to plug and play in a lot of different roles in your company.
Yeah, I mean, those are really great points. I feel like it kind of feeds into this next question of, you showed the graph of that the labor force participation is declining and will continue to drop. I mean, we know that from several factors like the birth rate and other things. If fewer people are working, what's the one strategic shift that companies must make right now to stay competitive?
Yeah, I think whether that's AI, whether that's, lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, I'm an automotive guy, so we talked a little bit about that earlier as well. But you have to think about how to be efficient. You have to think about how to be lean. And it's not just that you eliminate positions like we said before, but you're thinking about broadening the skill set of the people you have to wear more than one hat. We've all heard that analogy before. And I think more and more you're going to see people in an organization wearing multiple hats. So again, we'll go back to interviewing. Are you finding talent that's willing to wear multiple hats, learn multiple things? They want to be innovative. They want to be creative. They want to spread their wings and learn different things in an organization. Or are you just hiring for one particular position within an organization?
Yeah, it's either, that the one side of the coin is the do more with less, right? Increase efficiencies. Another side, which we always talk about, is being an employer of choice, right? So how can you start being an employer of choice so that as the market gets tighter, you can still attract people, you can still retain people, because it is one of the best competitive advantages right now for employers, and that will just continue to be an even bigger competitive advantage in the future.
That's really great. Well, I got one final question for you guys. So if you're a CEO or HR leader listening right now, what's the uncomfortable reality about the workforce, future workforce, that they need to accept today?
I think just that it's going to get harder. It's going to get harder than it is right now. I think a lot of people think that talent crisis of 21 and 22 was a blip that was caused by COVID, which it was, but I think that was a blip that went away. So I think just the fact that this is a challenge we're going to face and we are going to have to tackle that. And that way, I think once you accept it, then you can start being strategic about it. And it does take buy-in from that C-suite level. This isn't something that the frontline management team can solve, or that even that maybe HR person who isn't empowered to have that strategic level impact can solve. So it has to happen at the C-suite level. So
yeah, I like that. It does have to happen from the top down. You as that leader are going to have to help your leadership team realize that, people are our differentiator. Can't just be words on a paper or words on a wall. It has to be something that you believe in and that you embrace. And as much as AI is coming in, investing in your people is equally, if not more important for organizations to be considering. But it does have to start at that top. So if you're that HR leader, you need to start having those C-suite conversations. You need to create that alignment there first, and then figure out, how do I trickle that message into the organization so that we invest, develop, become an employer of choice. That's going to make a lot of things at least easier.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, that's great. I mean, yeah, like they said, things might be trending too harder, but invest in your people. And the good news about that is that you're not alone. We at Frontline Training Solutions, we believe in developing people, inspiring growth, and unlocking potential. And we have a whole array of solutions on our website, through our trainers, it's through our open enrollment programs, or even our custom intact team programs that we can come to your company and train your leadership team as a group. And I just think there's something really valuable about that, is training teams as a group, because then it's shared culture, shared language, and you guys can grow together. So we want you to connect with us. If you want to reach out about anything, reach out on frontlineon.com. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us again on The Frontline.